Join us as we share our experiences, strength, and hope. When the world says, give up, hope whispers, try it one more time.
What's up, Recovery fam, and welcome back to Sharing Our Stories. My name is Slim, along with Nani Al-Jalil. Look how I said that, Nani Al-Jalil.
It is. Leap year, you have to say that.
We
have to switch it around.
From Tribe Recovery Homes in Mahia. If this is your first time checking in with us, yes, this is Sharing Our Stories, and this program is all about addiction and recovery. And I said Mahia, but really, what's up to the entire world? Thank you very much as we expand here with sharing our stories and increase our reach. And thank you to everybody listening and watching from all over. We talk about recovery. We discuss where we've been in our addiction, and then we share that, yes, we do recover, because there are many pathways to recovery, and we want to share that there is a pathway for you if you are suffering. So thank you for being here. Nani! My love.
So far.
I know.
So
Why are you
far
sitting
away.
so far from me? Because Tomas is not here.
That's true.
How are you?
I'm doing really great. I've had a really great week. It's been busy, but it's been great.
That's because you're always doing good things for our people.
Reaching out.
Now,
Yeah.
before we started, though, before we came in here, we were, our guest, by the way, let me just leave this down here. Our guest is Meghan Guerrie, and she runs Sober Is. They are a peer recovery coaching center. She's our guest. But before we started, we were in my office, and Nani said that she came from a TC program, and she used to be feral.
Feral, like a feral cat. Yeah, it's true. I was.
I've never heard you use the term "I was feral."
I was like a feral cat. Yeah, before
You were
I went,
wild.
I was like a wild animal.
Wild woman in your addiction.
Yeah.
Because when you said that, I literally we were just sitting in the office. She said, and I was feral, and I looked at her like, that's not the Nani I know.
It's true. Before I made it.
You're in no way like that kind of person.
No, I'm not. Today I'm not. But it took a lot of work for me to get here. And when I got to the Haven Pier 1 therapeutic community, they did a lot of work on me.
I've never heard anybody say I was feral.
I was like feral cat. It's true.
Like that is such a way to describe, how you can be. Yeah. And then to know how you are now, like you're a leader in the recovery community.
Thank you.
You're my right-hand woman
Thank
here
you.
for sharing our stories.
Thank you.
And like, I can't even picture feral. Then again, when I go back and I like re-listen to what you said when you came on this program, I can't picture any of that.
Yes.
I don't picture
I had a whole life before
thug life.
a whole life before I made it here.
Like a hardcore, like Supergirl.
There was a lot going on.
Supergirl, no, that's too positive.
That was positive.
That was too positive.
We weren't
supposed to be so positive.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of life that I was living before I made it to this here microphone right now. But yeah, when I got to the TC program, I mean, I did a lot of work, and I was in that program for 2 years. Doing work, basically 24
your whole
hours a
way
day,
of being.
Changing my entire way of thinking. I had to change my entire perception. Everything that I did, we were programming all day long, every day.
Do you remember that
day
person
in and
that
day
you
out.
used to be, that feral person?
I do. I very much do.
Is there a portion of her inside you where you're like, oh my God, don't let that out?
Yeah.
Ever?
I mean, and that's why for me, that's why I always say, it's always a journey. It's never a destination. And I still every day have to put work in. I am in a fellowship. It's not ever going to stop for me because my disease is always very much alive and well. And so I went through behavior modification first, and have joined the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous because I know that it's much more than just it's behavioral, right? It's always going to be behavioral for me. And drugs and alcohol are just one symptom of my disease, but I can very much go back to the things that I know just like that. But yeah, I have to do things every day to keep myself on track. And
I love that you're aware of
will.
that and that you always are putting in work. Because a lot of people go, all right, I've gotten to this point. I have so many years under my belt. I don't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
I walk and live.
Yeah.
But I love that you know what you need to do for you. Yeah. And that you continue to, do that work daily.
Yeah.
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 And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you continue to, do that work daily. And that you contin
I think, and I mean, there's ebbs and flows, right? I can get complacent sometimes and I can fall back into certain behaviors, and I'm human, right? But you're right. It is an awareness, and I do my very best to stay on top of the things that I know that can get me. So I try to stay in my program and, stay in gratitude and have friends around me who keep me accountable, and my family and the people who love me. And, but yeah, I know who I am, and I know where I've been. And as long as it's people, places, and things, right? It's those things that I know that will keep me trapped. So, yeah.
That's my girl, Nani Al-Jalil, Tribe Recovery Homes, not feral.
Not feral today. Yes.
So, Mahai, we have a great guest. She runs Sober Is.
Yeah.
Her name is Meghan. I was looking at your last name. Meghan Guerrie. I had to write it out phonetically.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to butcher it. And thank you for being here.
Thank you
we
for
met
having
at
me.
Landmark Recovery a couple of weeks ago. Landmark Recovery, another great organization here in the Mile High. It's a sober living facility and fantastic. We've had guests on here from there. But we met there, and I met Meghan, and I said, you have to come on.
Yeah.
You have
totally.
to come on and share what it is that you do, and of course, in your recovery.
Yeah.
So, Mile High, we welcome our guest, Meghan from Sober Is, and she's from Colorado, here to sharing our stories. So, Meghan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me. I'm
Absolutely.
excited to be here. I love what you guys do, because I'm all about like being loud about your recovery, right? The louder
That's
you
right.
can be, the
Yeah,
better.
That's
like,
right.
if my story can like help with one person, then it was worth it, or at least I hope so. So thank you guys.
Yes.
Like you said, I'm from Colorado. I was born in Vail, was there for a very short time because my dad joined the military. And so military brat, and moved all over. I went to 6 different elementary schools before 4th grade. So pretty normal upbringing, honestly. Like, I have a sister and 2 younger brothers, but the younger brothers didn't come around till much later. My dad, we were stationed in Miami and then lived in England for 4 years, and then moved back to the States, and that's my parents got divorced. So actually I had a British accent when I moved back.
That's
Oh,
crazy.
And I was
What's moving around like that? Like,
it was awesome. It was hard, right? Because you have to be adaptable, because you're constantly the new kid, which now I'm grateful that I have that. But when you're little, it was hard. Just, new place. Literally every year I was in a different school until 4th grade. And then I moved here in 4th grade and was here since 4th grade. So I kind of got the best of both worlds, because I have friends that I've known since I was in elementary school. But also, when my parents divorced, I spent every summer in Kansas. And so I would be here for school and be in Kansas for 3 months, and then I'd come back for school. So I definitely found a way to fit in. And that started with needing to be very helpful. I was always like the helpful one. And then being funny was how I made friends. So I can be helpful to you, and I'm gonna, try and make you laugh. And so that was just my childhood. Like I said, it was pretty normal. Me and my sister fought like sisters, but got along. We were each other's like best friends, because we were constantly moving together. And then after moving here in 4th grade, I was able to establish like a really cool group of friends. Some of them, like I said, I'm still in contact with today. And like nothing too crazy. I know some people share and they have horrible upbringings, but I really can't say that about mine. Mine was really great. Like I said, I can look back now and just see that like that needing to be helpful and needing to be of service was kind of ingrained in me from a young age. But yeah, things were good. Got involved in soccer, and things were just, like I said, a pretty normal upbringing up until when I was in my sophomore year of high school. Was the first time that I really got introduced to drinking and drugs. Really, it was mostly drinking, but weed was this huge thing when you were in high school, or when I was in high school. And so that just made all that easier, right? Like that needing to be funny and needing to be helpful, like that took that away, because if everyone was drinking, then we could just hang out, and I didn't feel the need to be those things. And that became part of who I was. Like I was always going to show up and be like the fun one. We were always going to have a good time. And so from my sophomore year carrying on, like that was my main source of fun, was you would go out and you would party. Didn't really have any other activities. Like everything surrounded that. And that felt super normal. That's what everyone was doing, you know, from that age. And especially like the friend group that I had. And we partied all the time. But, you know, again, got my first job when I was 15. Kept a job, always worked several jobs through high school at one point, bought, you know, so I could buy my first car and things like that. And so I never thought I had any issues. Nothing really popped up for me with the drinking or anything until, I mean, the first run-in I had with the police was I was 18. I got a consumption ticket. And actually, I was told to drive home. I was the only one over 18.
Oh, wow.
And the police my friends wouldn't let the police inside, and they were like banging on the door. It ended up like 12 squad cars, drug dogs, like crazy thing. And there was like 15
All
kids in the house partying in this apartment.
Yeah.
And they came in, and they're like, get on the ground. And I was sitting in the chair, and they're like, who's 18? And I was like, me. And so they took my ID, and they handed it, you know, gave me my ticket, and they said, you can go. And I was like, I can drive home? And they're like, yeah, you can leave. And I was like, Mom, will you come get me? So my parents came, I was like, I'm not driving. So that was the first time I had, any issues surrounding drinking. But again, it was normal. Everyone got one, kept on going.
Those kind of things where it doesn't even raise a
No,
red flag in your mind
it's
yet.
normal. It's just the normal thing everybody's doing. And I had friends that kind of went on and got in more trouble, and I was like, still like, oh, all I do is drink. Like, I'm fine. Like, I work and do take care of all my responsibilities. Everyone like turns to me when they need help. Again, that helpful thing, no big deal. And like people, like my nickname was like Mommy Meghan, because I was the one taking care of everybody when we would party and they were doing whatever. And so that's funny, because fast forward to like my rock bottom, like the people that knew me back then were like, I don't know what happened. Well, you stopped and I kept going. That's what happened. And so I went to cosmetology school, had all these grandiose plans for that when I was in my early 20s. Then met my son's father when I was 24. And all those plans went out the window because I was in like this super serious relationship, and got pregnant when I was 26 with my son. And again, all of that was relatively normal. Me and my son's dad drank a lot together. That was also kind of like what we did. So it became something that was just part of my daily life. Then I stopped going out. So I think that kind of started to lay the groundwork for like, instead of going out and being social, like with my friends, I would just be at my house and drink. And then when my son before my son turned 1, me and his dad split up. And so that was super hard, because obviously that was never the plan, right? I came from a divorced family, so that was never really what I wanted for my kids. But it was what happened. And it was really at that point, with having split custody of my son, because me and his dad we've had our ups and our downs, obviously. That's why we're not together anymore. But we've always been really good about prioritizing Emerson. And so we've always had split custody and shared custody of him. And so when I didn't have Emerson, now I wasn't on mom duty, and I would just go back to going out all the time and partying all the time. Mm-hmm. And then when I'd have him, I would, work my jobs, take care of my son. He would go back to his dad's. I would party like a rock star. He'd come back on mom duty. And that's how it was for, I don't know, about a little over a year. I was working 2 jobs, and that was just kind of my life. But during that time, my mom got remarried shortly after my parents divorced. And so there was a man, my stepdad had been in my life for 20 plus years. He was my dad. He helped teach me how to drive, all these things. And so during that time when I left my son's dad, my mom and my stepdad were going through a divorce. And during that time is really where there was a shift in me, from partying and fitting in to using it to cope with something. So before it was just like that social lubricant, and that's really where it stayed. I got in some trouble, but I could not drink, and I was like, I'm fine. It's not a big deal. It was for sure functioning normally. Outside of, like, I'd be late to work a couple days, or there was things like that, but nothing major in my opinion. And then my parents got divorced. Me and my mom moved in together. And for the first couple months, 6 months, none of my family knew they were getting divorced. I grew up in a household where everything was fine. It's a fine household. Everything's fine, right? So we don't air dirty laundry in public. Everything's fine. And so initially I was like, oh, it's a great idea. She's leaving my dad. I'm leaving my son's dad. And we can support each other because I couldn't be live on my own. I didn't have that much income. And so we moved in together, and then I had this huge secret that I was carrying around. And so we would go to family functions and no one would know. She would excuse why he wasn't there. Even at one point, my dad, who lives in Kansas, came to town to see me and my son. And he still has family out here because my parents grew up in Colorado too. And my mom asked that I lie and not say that we lived together. She locked her door and went and stayed in a hotel for the weekend so he could come and see our apartment and not know what was going on. So I was dealing with my own stuff, right, of leaving my son's father, and then I was also trying to manage this whole situation. And there was, cheating involved with them, and so there was just a lot to carry around. And so I just started drinking more.
And you're kind of dragged into it.
Right. And again, trying to figure out how to navigate my own emotions and also support her. And then also feel like I'm lying. I lied to my dad's face. He came and walked around my apartment and I'm like, sorry, my roommate's out of town. And he's like, oh, that's fine. And but it was just super uncomfortable. And so at that moment is where that helpful prioritize other people in front of yourself really kind of reared its ugly head. And instead of dealing with it or finding healthy ways to cope or asserting proper boundaries, it was all drinking to deal with it, but still trying to show up because I'm not worth it, right? I don't deserve the time or the attention or the focus because I need to take care of everybody else while I'm kind of spinning internally. And that is where the spiral started for me. From again, that kind of drinking a lot, but more social aspects to using it to cope. And I can see that shift in that 6-month span of time. During that time, I was able to move out on my own and get my own place. So now there was no one watching me either. So I could just go home and do whatever I wanted to do. There was no, mom that was like, Megan, really? You're drinking on the patio at 6 o'clock? I know Emerson's not here, but are you sure? There's no one to do that. And so it was, whatever, whenever I wanted to. But mostly, again, nights, weekends, but a lot. And so from there, the secret got out. Everyone found out my parents were divorcing. So that relieved a little bit of the pressure. But I am very much so a person that wants to talk about things. We can move through it, but we're going to talk about it first. And my ex-stepfather now is not one of those guys. He is also very much so it's fine person, just like my mom is. And so because he was the one that cheated in the relationship, he cheated with somebody that we knew. Actually, it was a close friend of mine, of the families, but me and her got very close after I left my son's dad. And so it was just a lot of turmoil and chaos. And so I wanted to have those conversations, and he refused to. Him and my younger sister have always had a really close relationship. We used to joke growing up that she was the favorite. That was just known. She's the favorite, whether it's funny or not. She's the favorite. And so they had a great relationship, and he started to pull back from me, which made it even worse because it's I'm here taking care of mom, making sure she's okay. I'm, trying to navigate my what's going on with me and my son's dad and what life looks like now. And now she gets to still have this great relationship, and I'm the one that's over here left high and dry. Even after I've helped him, I've helped my mom, I started to get super resentful. And I felt like anytime I would voice those things, Meghan was always the strong one and the helpful one and the fun. So Meghan's fine. She's always been fine. She's fine now. And so that went on for probably another 6 months of watching that kind of happen. And I was just further and further into my drinking. During that time, I met my now husband, and he was kind of in a similar situation where he was on and off with the mother of his son. And so when we didn't have our kids, that's what we did. We just partied together. And that fed my need for the attention that I didn't feel like I could get from anybody else. and fed into the drinking because somebody else would do it with me. And his friends would do it with him. You know, so we just kind of created this little group of people. And I started, you know, my anxiety was through the roof. My depression was through the roof because I was trying to manage life and having this like huge problem that was spiraling out of control, to the point where I was on anxiety and depression medication and on FMLA from work so that I could call into work and not get fired. Oh, wow. Because my anxiety, it was so bad, but it was all stemming from the drinking. Like that's what, you know. And so that chaos, you know, it just was, we were in that cycle, right, of just drinking more and more. It got to the point where I was drinking in the morning because I was so sick, because that's how much it had escalated. And I was working for an insurance company at the time as an auto claims adjuster. So I was dealing with lawyers and car accidents and police and all that kind of stuff all the time. And that is a very high stress job. And so people at the office would be like, oh God, I had to have a glass of wine last night to cope. And I'm like, yeah, me too, but I had 3 bottles, right? And so there again, I'm co-signing that it's fine because my partner's doing it. The people at work drink at night. I'm drinking at night. It's fine. And then, well, when I don't have my kid, well, why wouldn't I drink? Because that's all I've ever done to be social and have fun. And so I was just all finding ways in all these different areas to co-sign what I was doing, even though I could feel it like spiraling out of control. And it caused a lot of issues within my family. So that made my family pull away more because they didn't know what to do. And I, you know, my stepdad, I completely stopped talking to him and had a lot of resentment there. And so again, those are the things that just keep you sick because they give you reasons to just do what you do. And so I went on a business trip for my job for some training. And the weekend I got back, I got completely annihilated, and I had my son with me. And I got a child neglect ticket. We were out walking around. I was drunk, apparently passed out, and they found me. Somebody called the cops, and my son was 3 years old at the time. So luckily, my mom still lived in the same apartment complex because we had lived together, and then I moved into an apartment, and she moved into an apartment in the same complex, and she came and got my son, thank God for that, and taken to detox and got charged with child neglect. So that was the first big thing that happened to really shine a light on what was going on. Got scared, tried to sober up, but again, I was drinking morning, noon, and night. Like I knew because of the job I had, I could go into work whenever I wanted. As long as I was getting my work done, they give you a lot of freedom because it is such a high stress job. And so I would, you know, go into work at 9:30 because I knew the liquor store opened at 9 on my way to work. And so I'd stop and I'd take a couple of shooters. At one day I did that, and for whatever reason decided to throw them out my window in the parking lot of my office. And I was leaving work late that night because I had gone in late, and somebody had ran over the shooters in the parking lot, and my coworker that was walking out with me, she goes, God, we all have our vices. And I was like, yeah, like got in my car and like got out of there as quick as possible. And so after the child neglect ticket, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and sober up. But I was so sick. My, you know, shakes were so bad. The sweats were so bad that it lasted for like a week and a half. But then it was like, okay, then I'm going to manage it, right? I can't stop drinking, but if I just have 1 or 2, I feel better and I'll be okay, but I'm not going to drink any more than that. And so I was able to kind of piece a few weeks of sobriety together, and then I drink a little bit, and then I piece a few more together, and got through the CPS investigation, and I got through these other things because I wasn't drinking around my son, and when I would drink, I was trying to be, you know, very minimal, just so I wasn't so sick.
So you're trying to hide.
Right.
Hide it and pass through whatever hoops you had to jump through.
Right. Well, and again, in my mind, it was like, okay, well, if I don't do it when Emerson isn't around, I'll be okay. Because that's the big thing, right? When CPS is involved, it's like, you can do whatever you want when your kids aren't around.
But at this point, you're realizing like you realize you have a problem,
I'm so
and
far
that
down
you're
that road.
you know you're in legal trouble, and that there's something going on. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And so that was when it got scary for me, because that was the first time that I felt out of control. Prior to that, it was always like, yeah, I drink a lot. Yeah, we know Megan's gonna show up and be the fun. Like she's probably gonna take it too far. But I got up and I got to work the next day, and my work never got affected, and I always showed up for my son. And so that was the first time that he was involved, and that when I really tried to stop, I couldn't. Like my body would not let me. And And so again, I'm just trying to bring it back in small ways so that I'm not so sick. And it took 4.5 months to go through the court process, because my CPS case was opened and closed within 2.5 weeks. Like, I mean, when I say like I hit the ground running, like I did everything I was supposed to do. But the court case kept getting pushed out because they couldn't get that CPS report. So finally, I was charged without the report actually being sent through, and have child neglect, like I said, on my record, and was put on probation. And so I had a godsend of a probation officer who was actually wanting to help. It wasn't just about the consequence. It was like, what do we do to make this better? Because she was the first person I started to get honest with. Like, I'm trying, man, but this is not working. And so it was March of 2017 when I got that child neglect ticket, and then was on probation starting in June. July, so probation, but I would drink and then just chug a bunch of water the next day. And then I would drink and just chug a bunch of water the next day. And I remember having conversations with her in those early few weeks of like working together and being on probation that she's like, all of your UAs are diluted. And I'm like, yeah, I just drink a lot of water, but I knew what I was doing. And so then July 31st of 2017, I was driving to work. It was a Monday morning, and super jittery from the weekend because I hadn't drank that morning, but we drank all weekend. Hadn't drank that morning, and I was super late to work. And so I passed the liquor store and I almost stopped, but I'm like, I'll go at lunch. I got to get to work. And ended up having a seizure while driving. I had just turned off Arapahoe Road doing 55 onto Havana, where it slows down to 35. There's apartments right there. Had a seizure while driving, swerved across the road and hit 3 parked cars and totaled all of them, mine and the 3 parked cars. I don't remember the impact. I remember coming to in the car because I heard the sirens. And so I remember trying to get out of the car and walking towards the ambulance and being like, stop, stop, stop. And then being put on a gurney in the back of the ambulance, and then it all goes black until a day and a half later. And even the entire time I was in the hospital, it was super foggy. But come to find out, I actually died in the ambulance and they resuscitated me. I had another seizure. I died at the hospital. They resuscitated me. And I had a blood clot, an aneurysm that had ruptured in my brain. Mm-hmm. And so from time of impact to time of surgery was less than an hour. At this point, my partner at the time had moved in, my husband now, but he was living with me, and he was the main one that was getting the flack from my family because I couldn't be the one that had the problem. So he was the one that everyone blamed for what I was going through, even though it was completely my own doing. And the reason that's important is because this car accident happens. I leave Monday morning. He kisses me goodbye. I get in this accident, have brain surgery, and they actually found another aneurysm or blood clot that hadn't ruptured yet. Oh, wow. So and so I have screws. You can feel them in my head because it was an emergency surgery. I have loss of hearing in my left ear because the muscle that wraps around your skull, they just detached it as fast as possible. And so, I have hearing loss. And screws and plates in my head, and then spent 7 days in the hospital. And
the aneurysm had nothing to do with your drinking or anything.
They can't prove it. I mean, I had fallen a couple times. There's so many things that I could say, it was probably that, or it was probably that, or it could have come from somewhere else, but my blood was so thin from the amount of alcohol I was drinking that it traveled. I was not drunk the morning it happened. I had not drank that morning, but I for sure drank the whole weekend leading up to that. And so I had also been driving without insurance because I had spent all my money on alcohol, even though I was making, $75,000 a year. Should have had plenty of money to pay my bills, but I wasn't. And so I was driving without insurance, totaled 4 cars. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So in the hospital, no one called my partner. He found out from my cousin on Facebook that reached out to him and was like, do you know what happened with Meghan? And he was like, no, I haven't heard from her all day. So that was super crappy. He got to the hospital later that afternoon after I had had surgery, and I was in recovery down, in, what am I trying to say? The ICU. And then they took me back upstairs after I had stabilized and I was on all sorts of medication. I just had brain surgery. And he, was trying to help support me in the hospital. And my family was there, but my stepdad, who I hadn't spoken to in a year, was there because my sister was there and my mom was there and they wanted him there. He had no business being at that hospital. And my son's dad and my son came, which to me really made me angry because I'm not dying. Thank God, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't die. And so why is my 3-year-old son at the hospital? It's because my family wanted to see him, right? So there's this whole time where I feel like, again, like I'm needing support and it feels like none of it was for me. It was all for these other people around me. My closest frame of reference for anybody going through something like I went through was my mom actually had brain cancer when I was in high school, had brain surgery to remove the tumor. And I just remembered my family like rallying around her and me and my sister, and they really showed up. And during that time in the hospital, there was people there, but I was so upset because they got my partner, Seth, kicked out of the hospital. They said that he brought drugs and a knife in his backpack. So they got him kicked out. For things like he was trying to read to me, and my mom got angry because they said my brain needed to rest, and he like brought Harry Potter because it's like my favorite series growing up, and was trying to read to me. And, they said that he unplugged my IV lines and just things like that didn't happen. But and whatever, if they did, that's their story. It doesn't matter at this point, right? Like I've moved past it, but it was just this really horrible experience. The surgery itself, obviously, and then the after. Few days after he, he got kicked out of the hospital. I wigged out in my hospital room because of everything that was going on and got sent back to ICU on a psych hold for 72 hours, which was almost worse than anything else. If you've ever been on a psych hold and strapped to a bed, it's terrible, horrible. And they moved me back upstairs, and my family, including my stepdad, so my stepmom, my dad, my mom, and my stepdad all tried to have an intervention with me in the hospital while I was on all these medications and had just gotten off of a psych hold. And the only person in the entire world that I wanted to talk to had been kicked out of the hospital, and they took my cell phone and wouldn't let me call him. So I basically told them all where they could shove it, and I kicked them out of my room and then brought them all back in individually and told them exactly what I thought of them, which has been held against me for a really long time. And obviously, like, probably not the greatest situation, but also like I'm not in my right frame of mind. Like literally people were just like inside my brain playing around.
Yeah, quite
ago.
literally.
Like literally, like probably not the time, or place. So I get out of the hospital and I go with my mom. She brings me back to her apartment and I was like, I want to go home. Like I want to go home. And so I went home and it was just like crickets. Like I didn't hear from anybody. And it just felt insanely isolating, especially after this, like, it was literally life or death. Like 1 in 4 people survive what I went through. And it just felt like nobody was there. And so my brain, here we are again, like, you literally just died, Meghan, and no one cares. So why should I care? So within 2 weeks, I was back to drinking. Wow. Yeah. Lost my job. I'm
hurting for you right now.
Okay.
I'm so glad you're sitting here with us.
Thank you. It was horrible. I've had to do a lot of work around that time because obviously my family has their own narrative of what happened. They feel justified in some of the actions that they took because I know they love me. But I didn't feel like it then. And it took a long time to talk through that. I was having a conversation a couple years back with my aunt, I'm very close with her. She's my godmother. And I shared with her almost exactly how I shared with you. And she's like, God, Meghan, I never looked at it that way. I just looked at it from our side and how scared we were. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, that's horrible. And I'm like, yeah. So, again, it's not to overly justify anything that happened leading up or after that, but it's a really crappy feeling. To feel like it doesn't matter. And so, I was right back to the races. I lost my job. I was about to lose my job anyways.
But you haven't even fully recovered at this point.
No.
No
takes
way
a year.
You could have,
It takes a
it's
year.
only been a couple of weeks. And
no, I have stitches in my head. Yeah. I had, so they sutured it. So I have a scar. It goes from here and it wraps all the way down and around and goes behind my, like if I move my glasses, you could see the scar. And I had staples and sutures in my head at this point. I woke up in my head. So I had long hair at that time, not as long as yours, but it was pretty long. And from about here over, my head was shaved. And in the hospital, because I was doing so well, again, Meghan's fine, right? I was doing so well. My family let me go into the bathroom by myself for the first time to see myself after this whole thing. And that's part of what started this like spiral of like me freaking out. Cause I had, catheters sticking out of my head and my face was like huge. And it was a really horrible time. And so because I lost my job, I was on disability. And so now I was just home being paid to be home. And you're supposed to be being paid to be home to get better. And I was paid to get home, and now I'm pissed off at the entire world. And so now I'm just going to go back to what my coping mechanism is. And I went out, my birthday, September 2nd, my belly button birthday. And I went out with friends and partied with staples in my head. And my mom called my probation officer, because I'm still on probation at this point for my child neglect ticket. And she put a scram bracelet on me. So I had a scram bracelet on, which is, for all of you that don't know, is something that tracks alcohol intake. It checks your sweat. And so, of course, I can't be sober, so I started smoking weed I don't smoke weed. I've never really been a pothead. But for that 2 months, man, I was in it. I was at the dispensary, and because I couldn't be sober. I didn't know how to sit in all the uncomfortable stuff that had gone on and was going on. It was just like this snowball. Like you can just see it get bigger and bigger. And in a really short amount of time, honestly, when from 27 to 30, like it's not that long of an amount of time. So scram bracelets on for 2 months. I get that off. I start drinking again. I go right back to drinking. The week before Halloween, my son had a dentist appointment, and I proceeded to chug 10 shooters before we went to said dentist appointment with his dad. And they wouldn't let me in the dentist office. I was so intoxicated. Wow. And
You got to be really drunk for people to notice when you're drunk, honestly.
Really
drunk. You have to really be
I
over
was
the
like
top for
pounding on the
people to
glass
start.
because they wouldn't let me come back in. Cops were called. I'm still on probation at this point. Cops are called. Get taken to the hospital. I could have gone taken to jail, but I wasn't. I was taken to the hospital to detox. And my mom picked me up the next morning, and full circle, my ex met his current wife at that dentist office. So I have a constant reminder of that. My son's stepmom still works at the same dentist office. So that's cool. We have a good relationship now, but it's just like, God has a sense of humor. Thanks.
Yes, he does.
Thanks for that. So yeah, get out of the hospital, literally walk back to my apartment because we still were living in the same apartment complex, and found a shooter in my purse and drank it. There was no stopping at that point. I was so far out of control, and it felt like I was out of control. Like it was this compulsion. Like I couldn't stop if I wanted to. But probation officer was like, you need to do, like I called her crying because I was like, I need to do something. And so they started me on like an version of EMDR therapy where they put electrodes on your head and try and like change your brain waves and stuff. And I started IOP. That brainwave situation gave me like Rob Zombie status dreams. Like if you've ever seen House of a Thousand Corpses, that's what I slept through every night.
Oh God.
Oh my gosh.
So what do you do? What do you do when you can't sleep? You drink about it. So then now I'm going to IOP, and I'm doing this thing, and I'm still drinking. Like it's insane to talk about it now. Like it's just crazy. So that happened. IOP was good. I would dry out for 3 weeks, drink again. Dry out for 2 weeks, drink again. And that was my pattern until beginning of February of 2018. So right before Halloween, so end of October, detox, crazy cycle. Ended up getting through a semester of college with an A because that was what I was going to do. I'm on disability still. I'm going to go back to school when I was sober. And there's just a really weird time. And then they fired my IOP counselor, the place I was going to IOP. And so I stayed sober for another 3.5 weeks and then fell off the wagon. I had been doing so well that my mom let me keep her car. She went to visit my sister, who at that time in my eyes was like the perfect one, and her husband was in med school, and so it was part of my resentment, right? Like, my perfect little sister. We have a great relationship today, and I love her dearly. But this is my narrative in my head at the time. So she goes to see her and leaves me her car because I've done so well. She's going to let me drive her car because I don't have a license because I was driving without insurance, and I totaled my car. But I can go pick up my son from daycare and just have a few days of normal. Well, I started drinking and forgot to pick my son up from daycare when it was my day to pick him up. Best of my recollection is that I tried to drive to where he was, and somewhere along the way realized I was too intoxicated, left my mother's car in a parking lot, ironically enough, a preschool parking lot, not my son's, and Ubered home, snowing outside, don't have my keys, sleep outside, have the wherewithal the next morning to, remember I Ubered, so I Ubered back to the car. I left it parked with the door open in this parking lot. It's like 9 o'clock, so the preschool's already in. They've called the cops because there's an abandoned car in their parking lot, who have also contacted my mother because they ran the plates and they found it was registered to her. So I walk into the front doors of the preschool. I'm sure I looked great. And they're like, "Are you Jan Ryder's daughter?" And I was like, I am. So the car got towed. I Ubered back to my house. In my drunken stupor overnight, I called the emergency line for the apartment complex. Like, if you have, water main break or whatever.
Because you're locked out.
Because I'm locked out.
Yeah.
Which they don't do lockouts, FYI, people. They don't. Especially not outside normal business hours. And I called them about 60 times. So I had to walk into the apartment complex main office. And they're like, "If you ever, you will be evicted." And I'm like, "Can I just have my key, please?" Thank you. So I get in my house. And I call my dad. And I call my cousin, and they're like, "You're like a cat with 9 lives, dude, and you're on 12. Like, when is it enough?" And I checked into Parker Valley Hope the next day.
Yeah.
That was March 3rd of 2018, and I've been sober since. A lot of, for me, rehab was finally admitting out loud that I had a problem. Even sitting through IOP, even all the chaos that I had caused, it was, I'm too weak to deal with this. It's my problem. It's not that I have a problem. It's that I am just too weak of a human to deal with this. Like, you should be able to figure this out, Meghan. And I went to rehab, and I was in there with a doctor and a lawyer and a construction worker and just like all these different people from all these different walks of life. And I was like, oh, it's just like a part of who I am, not who I am.
Right.
And it was such a pivotal moment for me. Because then I could lean into asking for help. If it's something that I can only fix internally, I can't ask anybody to help me. Clearly, my past has shown that no one's going to help me, or at least that's what my brain was telling me, right? So that's what rehab did for me, and it was the best experience. Parker Valley Hope is an amazing program. I cannot say enough about the people there. It was an amazing experience.
They do good work there.
It was incredible. And so from there, I was 2 weeks into rehab, and I still had my apartment, right? I'm still on disability at this point. And I actually did, because I didn't have any insurance, I didn't even have Medicaid at the time, did private pay to get into rehab. My grandmother had passed away 9 months prior to this, and I didn't get to say goodbye to her, which was terrible. I have 3 grandparents pass away in this time, and I didn't say bye to any of them, which was horrible. But she passed away and left my dad some money, so he had money to send me to rehab and cash pay for me to go. And so I was very grateful for that, because even the people that were there, if you've ever been to rehab, your insurance can pull at any time. So you could be there for a day, and your insurance could call and say, "Oh, that you didn't substantiate why she needs to be here, and she's got to leave." And so I was able to stay the full 31 days. But like 2 weeks into me being there, me and a friend were like, "Well, you could move into my apartment, because I know I can't be there by myself, and I can't afford it. But you could move in, and we'll keep each other sober." Like I was grasping at straws of ways like, how am I going to take what I'm learning right now and not go back? Because to your point, the people, places, and things, right? That gets like inundated, like ingrained in your brain. And I'm like, places, I have to go back to my apartment. Like, what am I going to do? And that's when I found out and learned about sober living. And I toured one, while I was still in rehab, I went and toured one place, and there was like 17 women in a 4-bedroom house, and there was like rickety partitions in between beds. And I'm insanely arachnophobic, and I walked into the basement, and this chick has a freaking tarantula, and I'm like, nope, no, I'm screwed. I'm going home, and I'm probably gonna drink again because I can't live here. Like, what am I gonna do? And then I found Sobriety First. So they came, they picked me up, I toured their house. I actually went and toured twice because there was a couple girls that I was in rehab with that I was like, you have to see this house. Like, it's so great. And ended up moving in to one of the Sobriety First houses and remained in sober living for 12 months, almost exactly. So rehab taught me that it wasn't me, it was a disease, and that it could just be a part of who I was. Like, now I'm like, I have purple hair and green eyes and I'm an alcoholic. Like, it's just part of who I am, right? And then sober living showed me how to live sober, like that I could be out in the world. And it was great because even when I, was struggling, I had a sober place to go back to. And I had people around me that were trying to do the same thing. And it was just this really cool, supportive environment. And so I got a sponsor. That's what, you're supposed to do. I got a sponsor. And I still am not driving at this point. So being in PVH, I went to a lot of meetings in the Parker area that were wonderful. But then moving back into Aurora, it was hard to get down there. Public transportation wasn't what it was. This is pre-COVID. So there isn't Zoom options like there are now. And just the spaces and the places and where I was going, just I didn't land with it. I got a sponsor, but we never really clicked. We're still friends on Facebook, and she's an amazing woman, but I never was able to really find my groove with the steps. And so I started taking bits and pieces from all the people that were around me, right? Like, I knew there was a meeting I could go to if I needed it, but I also knew I had this woman in my house that I looked up to that I could talk to if I needed to. Mm-hmm. And I got a therapist. And so by the time I left sober living, I had this really cool web of people around me. And that's what I attribute the fact that I've been able to maintain my sobriety for the length of time that I have, is that I have all these different pieces and parts of my world that I've created. Like, I collect people and collect things and experiences, as I go along. Mm-hmm. And that's what keeps me sober, and staying teachable and self-aware, to your point. So again, know, and also know, like, if it's not working right now, what do I need to change? What do I need to switch up? Because it's constant. It's constant. It's not as hard today as it was, right? It becomes part of what you do, not I have to do this thing. Yes. But almost 6 years later, on Sunday I'll have 6 years. Yay! And that's what I try and give back to the community now, is because when I left sober living, it was like, well, if you don't do A, B, and C, you're going to be back here. And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be back here, but I haven't done A, B, and C. And so it was this scary thing. And I started to get more time under my belt, and I started feeling stronger and still doing and using these different tools that I had. And I knew I wanted to give back to the community, but I'm like, well, I'm not going to sponsor because that wasn't my path. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to pretend that it was. It helped so many people. It just wasn't mine. Yeah. And so when peer coaching was introduced to me, I was like, I can do that. Like, that I have. And it literally, it gives me goosebumps. And so 4 years ago, I started coaching. Mm-hmm. And I've coached with different entities. I've coached in different organizations. And now able to have my own team of people that work with me at Sober His. It's just, I don't know, it's like pinch me, am I in a dream? Because it's just the coolest thing that I get to do now. And so to share my story, it does truly feel like this weird movie almost. Like, I know it happened and I know it's part of my life, but like the juxtaposition between that and now is just crazy. And to be able to share that with people, that's so possible. But everything that I went through is why I can do what I do today. And it didn't change who I was. It helped me heal the pieces that got me sick. And then it helped lift up the parts of me that I always was trying to be, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm grateful for everything. And I mean, I hate that I hurt people. I hate that my son had to, he doesn't remember mommy drunk, but he was there for stuff, I hate that. But if I changed any of it, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys today. And so I wouldn't change a thing. I had to sit in a court of law and testify for custody of my stepson, and they drug up my past, and the lawyer was, well, you only have 12 months. And I'm like, well, if you do the math, I have 25, but whatever. Like, it was just like, you have a child neglect ticket and read your record and blah, just dragging me through the mud. And that's exactly what I said to her. Like, on the stand, I was like, yeah, that's all true. But if I had to do it again to sit here and have the beautiful life I have today, I would absolutely do it again. Because today is, if it could have been different, that would have been great. But if it was different, it wouldn't be what it is now. And so that's what your recovery gives you, right? Like that peace of knowing that that's part of it. So
What do you see in the mirror now?
I see all those pieces of me that I'm proud of. I really am proud of the person I am. I think I am, I'm tenacious. I'm stubborn. I joke with my husband that like all the things that make me annoying make me successful because I'm insanely stubborn and a little bullheaded sometimes. But I'm caring and I want to help and I want to share that there is another way, and to have found something that I get to do every single day with the amazing group of coaches I get to work with. I have the coolest team, you guys. Like, you've had some of them on this show. We talked about that before we started. And, like, it's just the coolest group of people. And watch the light come back on in people's eyes is amazing. So, yeah, I see somebody I'm happy and secure and grateful and all those wonderful things that I always wanted to be and was masking or thinking I had to mask. Yeah. And or that no one else would see or care to see. So it's just a really cool life I get to live today, and I'm super grateful. So yeah.
What are some of the things, and we ask this, but what are some of those things that you get to do for yourself and your recovery every day?
Sure. I have this love-hate relationship with the term self-care. Because when I was in early recovery, it was talked about a lot, because it is, and self-care is important. But for me at the time, as like a single mom, going to the bus 2 hours each way to get to work every day and stuff, like, to me, self-care was like an extra 3 minutes in the shower. That was my self-care. And the other girls were like, oh, I sat on the couch and binge watched Friends, and then and that was their self-care. And I'd be like, nice. So, like, cool for you. So, no, my self-care now is like these little moments that I steal back for myself. I listen to Audible in the car. I love podcasts and listening to books. I am so busy. I have my boys are both 10. My stepson and my son are 10. They're 6 months and 3 days apart. And then my 15-year-old nephew recently moved in with us. So I have a house full of boys, and then this business, and I don't have time to read, so I listen to it in the car. And so I almost get annoyed if someone like wants to go somewhere with me, because I'm like, damn it, now I can't listen I can't listen to my book in the car. I feel like an old lady. I always say books on tape, and I'm like, God, I'm old. Yeah. No, Audible. I listen to Audible in the car. It's not books on tape.
I feel the same way. I love my podcast
all the time. All the time. Okay, good. Thank God. I say it all the time. Like, the book on tape. I mean Audible.
No, I get it. I'm like, don't ride with me because I want to listen to my podcast.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I feel like an ass sometimes because I'm like, are you sure you want to go?
Happens to me at lunchtime all the time. It's like, do you want to ride with me for lunch? I'm like, no,
thank you.
I want to be in my own car.
I'll meet you there.
Yep, see you there.
Yep. So I'm in my car and I get to listen to my books, and that's my thing. And that's a big one for me.
That's a big one.
And I have my crazy colored hair. That was something that I was like, you know what? I work for myself. Screw it. I want to have.
Yeah.
Like my 16-year-old self would love my hair. So I'm like, that part of me is
100%.
Love yourself. Come on.
Yeah. No, totally.
Especially now.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. No, I do what I want now. I got my hand tattooed. It says "Let them." So when I shake people's hands, it's like, Like, that's why I put it
Let
there.
them.
Let them.
Yep.
Let them think what they want.
That's
Let them say what they want.
And you've got the tattoo there that says 303, which is not for Denver.
No, it's not. I mean, I love Denver.
It is for your sure,
but it's my sobriety date.
Yep.
March 3rd, 2018.
Mean it. Yep.
So,
yes.
And it's there. Like, I don't have any plans. I don't plan to drink today, and I don't plan to drink tomorrow. But whatever the future holds for me, like, that date is special. And it was the date my life changed forever.
Yes. Yeah, no matter what.
It's your new birthday.
It is. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah. This weekend, Sunday, I'll have 6 years. So.
Yeah,
for those listening on the radio, that is today, if you're listening on the radio.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, hey. So sobriety first was your sober living.
Yes.
And you were there for a year. Was there any hard points while you're living in sober living?
So many.
Like, I need out of here.
There's so many. And there's this thing in recovery, right, where like we need to get rid of our resentments. And I completely agree with that, because those things keep you sick. But
I want everybody to know it's not always easy.
But those resentments, because I did. So to your point was, I met so many people that I was like, you are the reason I will never do this again. I never want to deal with your drama. I never want to deal with your entitlement. I never because you don't get to choose. It's like the most effed up version of like the real world ever. You know what I mean? Like 7 strangers pick to live in a house and they're sober. Like, what? It's crazy. If they could put cameras in there, I can only imagine what they would record. But so again, I met amazing people, but I also met people that I was like, I will not put myself, my son, I will never be here again. So thank you for that motivation. So some could call it resentment, but to me it was motivation. Like, nope, it was a lesson. So yeah, it was the hard parts, amazing parts. but so grateful. Sober living is what is why I'm sober today. Like rehab was great, but sober living is what taught me how to be sober in the world and working and all, everything. Because just because you're sober, life doesn't get perfect and easy. If that was the case, everyone would be sober.
Well, you said at one point you were like, I was 2 weeks in at the treatment, and you were saying to a friend that you had made there, hey, let's go live together and let's do this and let's do that. And in my head, I was like, that's not going to be good.
Right, no.
But then you literally said I went into sober living instead, and I stayed there for a year, which that was just like a big, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
A lot of people go, hey, 90 days was all I could take, or 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's pretty standard. It's like, I did about 6 months and I was done.
Yeah. In all fairness, I did. There was several moments where I'm like Googling basements for rent or rooms for rent. But I also was stubborn enough to know, like, God, I've done all of this work. And if I don't find the right situation, I'm going to be right back here.
Don't mess
so that
this
same
up.
thing of like, I don't want to do this again. And so actually, when I moved out, me and my partner moved into a 1-bedroom apartment. It was a 1-bedroom and a den, 1 bathroom with me and with us and our 2 kids. They shared the master. We had the den. Didn't even have a closet. I was working in retail at the time, and they were getting rid of rounders. Those like glass rounders. And so I took one home, and that's what we had for like our closet in the den, that like where our bedroom was. And like literally, he would Venmo me 50 cents for the bus. I'd send him $1 for the bus. Like we had nothing except enough to pay our bills. And that's all that mattered. And from there, now we like own our home. We have a nice cars and like these businesses. And so like, it's just so crazy to look at where we were to where we are now. But it's that like one day at a time, truly 1 second at a time sometimes, and being open to the possibilities and to the conversations. Because, he found this apartment. We were looking at apartments. We couldn't find any in our budget. He runs a dog business, and he was walking a dog, and he walked through this apartment complex and saw the door open to this apartment. And he's like, I think that's a 1-bedroom. And so he called that day and got pricing on this apartment, and it was in our price range. But had he not been looking, it would have walked right past it, and who knows what would have happened, because we couldn't afford anything. And so, it's just doing the next right thing, staying open to things, and
being willing.
Being willing.
Yeah.
And it will take you a long way. And sometimes it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but you just keep marching, and it gets easier.
So your peer recovery coaching is called Sober Is.
Sober Is peer recovery coaching. Yep.
And it can be found at soberis.life.
Yes, sir. It can. We work with all rays of Medicaid and private pay clients right now. We have 14 coaches, and we're kind of spread all over Denver metro area. Some clients up in the Gunnison County area. So like we're just all over. And our whole thing is we're not aligned with any specific sober living or treatment facility. We literally get clients from all over and meet people in the community and meet them where they're at. So that's to say, like, if you're in sober living, if you're living by yourself and you want to go grab coffee, if we are in the community completely. And I love that because we are truly like boots on the ground. And we do a lot of really cool fun stuff. That's a big thing for me, is how do you have fun in recovery? Especially early on, I was so busy working and paying my bills, like I didn't ever really look up to have fun, right? Thank God for sober living, because the girls in my house like made me have fun. But I didn't do a lot of fun stuff. And so we do barbecues and do reservoir days. We went to Elitch's and Malwolf last year and Botanic Gardens. And this year we're actually doing a 3-part concert series with Sober AF. So we're going to do this huge festival, food festival.
Can you send me links to all this we can share with everybody?
Absolutely. Yeah. But there'll be music and food trucks, and the whole idea is like family. It's going to be at a huge park with a water park, and just bring your family and have fun and get cool resources, right? Like there's so many cool resources out there for people. Like no one should feel stuck. It's so easy for your addiction to tell you you're stuck, and you are not stuck. There's so much out there. And we want to bring that to everybody. So I will for sure share all those resources.
Please do. And I want to go. That's the other reason.
Please come.
Go.
Please come.
I need some fun.
It's going to be fun.
I'm not having enough fun. I need to have some fun.
We all could have more fun.
Can you ever have too much fun? Well, you can't have too much fun. Too much sober fun? No.
Never.
No. That's the whole point, right? Is to enjoy your life. And so have some fun.
Mahai, our guest has been from Sober Is. You can go to soberis.life. It is Meghan Guerrie, and celebrating 6 years.
Yes.
On the 3rd of March. So
yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for sharing. Mahai, please do go to her website. All Sober fan, please check it out. That is soberis.life.
This is Sharing Our Stories. I do want to make a correction to something that I said at the beginning of the program, and that's Landmark Recovery. They are a treatment and a treatment center, not a sober living. So if you are looking for treatment, Landmark Recovery works as a treatment center. Once again, this is Sharing Our Stories. We're here every week. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us on YouTube. And of course, we are live on Facebook. Please like, subscribe, share, follow, all of the above so that we can spread the message of recovery and that there's many pathways to recovery. There's not one way. If 12-step doesn't work for you, there are other options. There's so many options. Your way of recovery might just be, you know what? I locked myself in my house and every day I just kept praying. And you know what? That is a way to your recovery too. So whatever your pathway to recovery is, we want to let you know there is one for you. This is Sharing Our Stories, and we'll see you again. Thank you to our guest, Meghan Guerrie.
Thank you. Thanks,
Mile
guys.
High Recovery fam, thank you.